We interrupt your program to issue a severe warning for an impending emergency making its way to your area. We urge you to be watchmen of the times and to be prepared with the essential knowledge and supplies for the wake of the final hour.
Welcome to the Final Hour podcast, coming to you from the original Living Word Christian Center out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is John Gapp. I'm Jim Hammond. This is Lonaiah Farrell, and our producer, Dee Schrader, is back. We had to go out without him last week.
Yo.
And, I would say that our mission statement you could probably find in the opening. Check out our opening sometime if you don't just go right through it. It's basically just being a watchman on the walls. It's scriptural so that you can pray. You should know the signs of the times.
Yeah.
It's very scriptural, especially in regards to Israel. Also, it helps you to look forward to the rapture, which the Bible says if you are looking for the rapture, it actually purifies your soul.
Yeah.
And so getting right into it, major earthquake in Afghanistan, killing 1,000. I'm just going to run through a couple things. You've got this Pope who's looking at, like the last Pope, at resigning. He's got major health problems, and we'll definitely watch things like that. But I think the main thing we want to talk about, which we've been saying for a while, and we'll send it to Lonaiah here with some information on the coming food crisis.
Yeah, so we brought this up,
Yeah.
and we've got a lot of listeners who have actually sent articles into us, so everybody's it's catching ears.
That's so
So
cool,
people
too.
are paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had a top UN food official issue, or, he's asking for an end to the war because he's saying the war in Ukraine is causing a risk of famine and causing hell on earth. So he said, due to global economic impacts of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it's causing this problem, right? Everybody's saying that. He said it's devastating. He said, even before the Ukraine crisis, we are facing an unprecedented global food crisis because of COVID, and fuel prices are increasing, which I did read an article this morning of how diesel prices are going up and how fertilizer prices are already going up, which is going to be another, catalyst to the famines. So he said, when you think things couldn't get worse, they become devastating. So he said the famine would destabilize a nation and cause mass migration if the crisis were not addressed.
Many nations.
Yeah. So this guy who we've referenced before, the blog, the Economics Collapse blog, he said, we are being warned well ahead of time that this is coming. Joe Biden has publicly admitted that the coming food shortages are going to be real. Not only by Joe Biden, but like governors of other states are stating this, right? And the head of the UN, which we already said there's going to be hell on earth. Food prices are already escalating. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but butter at Costco went from like $6 to almost $13 in less than a year, right? That's pretty dramatic. All over the globe, and food riots have already erupted in Sri Lanka and elsewhere, which I did read this morning, I think it was Sri Lanka, that they won't allow people to like eat chickens. So they're like causing their own crisis with chickens for some reason. Like chickens.
Is that so that they can? I mean, if chickens are still alive and they can lay, then they're still a renewable.
I don't know. I just thought
food
it was
source.
Funny. So many seem to assume that our leaders have everything under control and that things will work out just fine somehow. Unfortunately, the truth is that everything is not going to be okay. So far this year, the number of hungry people around the globe has risen to more than 800 million people. So we have much worse things ahead. And David Beasley, who is the head of the UN food, he's the UN food official, right? We already said, he said there's going to be hell on earth. But he said frightening shortages of food. And those shortages could potentially spark civil unrest in literally dozens of different nations.
Yeah.
Speaking in Ethiopia's capital, I don't know the guy's name, but Adaba on Thursday, the David Beasley guy said that they would destabilize countries that depend on wheat exports from Russia and Ukraine. But most Americans are not paying much attention to this rapidly growing crisis because they don't think it will really impact them. Which when COVID was going on, like we went to Costco, we thought food was going to run out, and it didn't. But this, they're saying, could happen in 6 to 12 months.
But when we were going to Costco in a COVID situation, what we didn't understand is while we were keeping our own food supply stable in the United States, when we have to draw back to keep all of our exports in the United States, it makes it so that we can't export and help other countries that need our supplies.
Right. And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I went to one Target and they literally had like nothing on their shelves.
Right. Yeah. They're, instead of being, pretty full all the time.
Yeah.
You notice the gaps in between the shipments.
Yes, you do. I started asking them when they're getting their shipments in so I can show up on that day.
I think it's coming in before 6 months.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be here this summer.
Got to be ready.
Remember, we talked about also rolling blackouts and so we've talked about all this, how bad we think it's going to get. I don't think we're going back to revolutionary times, but it would not hurt to have a couple months of food.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Agreed.
So we want to just run through here the bold judgments or the vile judgments, as some translations call them.
Yeah.
We've gone through the seal judgments, the trumpet judgments, and there's 7 of these. We're going to do 3 this week because we have a lot to report. But it starts in Revelation 6 through 8, and it says, the 7 angels came out of the temple, having the 7 plagues, clothed in pure and white linen, and having their breast girded with golden girdles. And one of the 4 beasts gave unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials, which can be translated bowls, B-O-W-L, full of the wrath of God, who liveth forever and ever. Wouldn't want to drink that. Verse 8, and the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. There is a temple in heaven, and no man was able to enter into the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled. And I hear many theologians say how they believe the seal judgments will be spread out, and there'll be a certain amount of time between them.
Sure.
The trumpet judgments will also be spread out with time, but with the trumpet judgments, the time frame of the proximity of them happening, they become closer and closer together.
With the bowl judgments.
Did you say that nobody can go into the temple?
Yeah, that's what I was.
So nobody can go into the temple until this.
That's what it just said.
Okay, interesting.
And by the time we get to the bowl judgments, theologians believe they're just going to be bam, 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 one after another.
Man.
So these 7 judgments in the King James, they're called vile judgments, but the word vile means bowl judgments, and these lead right up to the Battle of Armageddon, one right after another. They hit. So if you're left behind here on earth, and if you're still here on earth and you've made it that long, right, you know that you just have to get through those 7 more judgments. Okay, I'm joking.
You're
right?
being, yeah.
Because they lead right up to the Battle of Armageddon. Revelation 16, 1 and 2. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, go your ways and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth. And there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image.
So, like the trumpet judgments, wasn't there one like number 5? It was similar to that.
Sores.
But it was for anybody.
But they're worshiping an image and they can't get healed, but they're still worshiping the image.
Well,
Gotcha.
that's the locust, right? The locusts are the ones that
the
stung
demon
him
locust.
The demon.
for 5 months. But that
demon locust.
just said it gave him so much pain, and it was a sting of a scorpion. This is coming with an open sore is what this
Like
is.
an
If you look
ulcer?
into the translation, the whole world coming under this plague of an open sore.
Gotcha.
Coming upon everyone that has the mark of the beast. And it's interesting.
Don't get the mark.
It's interesting how a lot of these judgments are like the plagues of Egypt, because the Egyptians
Yeah.
had these open sores, or maybe they're like the Egyptians had boils that came upon their population as well. And so Revelation 16:3, the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. So notice it says, as the blood of a dead man.
Yeah.
And so,
So that's not like red
That's thick
coming
blood.
coming straight out. It's like,
And
you
think
know,
of the
like
smell.
when blood gets old from a dead thing, it's coagulated. It's gross. It's not pretty red.
Think of how bad it's
It's not crimson. It's like gross.
Gross.
Yeah.
and it did say as the blood of a dead man. So it looks like blood, but it's not blood. And think about every single thing every single thing in the sea dying.
You can, interestingly, did you know there is something called red tide? Like if
Yes.
you,
Yes.
so especially if you you live in the Pacific, at certain times you can't eat the shellfish because of this algae, this red algae that gets into all that. And sometimes there are algae blooms that are massive.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's going to be part of it, but
Well, they might
there
just
are
call
there
it
are
that
already
at the time.
things. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? They already have something that's similar to it, so they can point to that.
Right.
Interesting.
So the shores will be full of dead marine life, and probably just floating everywhere. And if it's the blood of a dead man, it's probably a darker, or almost a black-looking blood.
Gross.
And again, the Nile River turned red like blood for the Egyptians.
Right.
So these are very similar to the plagues that the Egyptians had to deal with when Moses was trying to get them to let.
But this is all water.
Yes, this
So
is
then
salt
they
water.
won't, no one will have
like-
any water to drink.
No,
This is
salt
like
water.
the oceans.
Oh, the oceans. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so, but Revelation 16:4, the third angel poured out his vial upon the fresh water, upon the rivers and the fountains of waters, and they became actual blood. So as we get down to the end here, this says that no one on earth at this time can find any fresh water to drink but blood. This is literal blood. The sea, which can't drink anyways, looks like blood.
What
This is literal blood that's contaminated all the fresh water. And so Revelation 16:5-7, I heard the angel of the waters say, "Thou art righteous, O Lord, thou art and wast and shall be, because thou hast judged thus. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy." And I heard another out of the altar say, "Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are their judgments." So,
It's interesting in verse, I think it's 6, it says, "For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink." One of the translations says, "For it is their just due."
yeah, and man does not act human. You know, I mean, to the point where they don't act human.
Yeah.
I don't know of any animals that torture each other.
No,
You guys have any idea who the best torturers in the world are?
it's humans.
Oh, of course, but it's the Syrians.
Oh.
The Syrians are said to be the most creative torturers there are in the
Really?
world, and I don't know why I'm going there.
I don't know.
Nothing against anyone that's a Syrian Christian, but that country, and we know a lot because Israel, obviously, they've gotten hold of Israeli spies and things like that. But so listen, with that, we've gone through the first 3 trumpet judgments.
Yeah.
The first 3 bowl judgments. And it's what man deserves. Animals don't even treat. They don't torture for enjoyment. If they're going to kill, they kill to generally eat, or it's
Right.
because it's competition for their food.
Yeah,
Right.
protection.
And so,
Yeah.
man is the evilest creature on earth, definitely.
I was going to also say, so we have those 3 judgments, And we have what you were saying before, Armageddon is coming quickly. Like this is going to be boom, boom, boom. It has to be in succession, because how do people and civilizations continue to live without fresh water?
Not much. And I did know that the Singaporeans years ago, because I lived in Singapore for 2 years, figured out how to make clean fresh water out of urine.
Yeah,
They actually
Right.
figured that
Yep.
out. So there is ways, but there's 4 more judgments now.
Right.
So tune in next week for the last 4 bowl judgments. And so from that, we've got some really good information on Israel here for you, because that's the main thing that you want to watch. And it says to be really a watchman from an Israeli perspective, from the walls of Jerusalem, means from an Israeli perspective. So with that, we've got John with some really interesting information.
Well, in past episodes, we've been talking about Israel and this newer supply of oil that they recently discovered in the last few years that they're really taking advantage of now. But Israel has something that they're announcing. Jimmy Evans on the Substack from their tipping point. He was reporting from an AP News article about this deal that is happening between Israel and Egypt. And Egypt always catches my ear, like you were preaching recently about Egypt and how the Antichrist is going to go after Egypt at some point. So I think there is some animosity there somewhere. So,
Well, they attack him too. For start,
Right.
yeah, they do.
Right.
They're the first ones to attack the Antichrist. Egypt is.
yeah. So Israel is signing a gas deal with the EU. This is what it says in that Substack article. Israel will deliver natural gas to Egypt through a pipeline. Egypt will then convert it to liquefied gas, which will then be sold on the European market. They're saying what they're looking at is they're saying it's a special moment. That's the European Commission chief Ursula von der Leyen in a joint news conference alongside Egyptian and Israel energy ministers. I very warmly welcome the signing of this historic agreement. So this is going to be a big thing. Jimmy Evans also says the Jerusalem Post has called Israel's natural gas supply its secret weapon on the global stage. In recent years, Israel has discovered and opened 2 gas fields containing an estimated 690 billion cubic meters of natural gas combined. Wow. And Israel gas is already used to supply energy in Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. And these other countries have no option but to rely on Israeli gas. But we've been talking about this gas as possibly the bait, as the hook in the jaw for Russia to find its way a little bit south to start engaging with Israel.
Right.
Well, even at this point, it's not just natural. I'm sure it's natural gas.
Sure.
But it's food, because Israel is a major. They've got a lot of vegetables.
Yep.
They've got a lot of fruit. That land, as was prophesied in the Bible, would go from a wasteland. And once the Jews moved back there, the land really produces, and they're one of the top fruit producers. Really, probably the top fruit producer in the Middle East, one of the top 10 in the world. And, moving on next week, that's probably the hook in the jaw is food and this natural gas. Everybody's turning to them, all right, for this natural gas because of the problems with Russia. So, but we will conclude with the trumpet judgments next week. But some really good news here, and I would call it great news. Not the trumpet, the bowl judgments. The Israeli government collapsed. They lost their 61-seat majority. It was a 61 to 59 majority, so it was hanging by a thread as it was. Prime Minister Bennett is out, which is something I've been praying for for a long time, and it is great news. He brought in what they called the government of change, And since his government has been in power, they have never seen more violence, personal, up-close murders by terrorists. When I was there for 10 days in March, it was every single day. Because of these this weak government, the demands of the Palestinians and local Arabs for their own state have grown hugely. And we could go into detail, but this government had a policy of really giving in to the Palestinian agenda every day. And if you're paying attention to what's going on over there, just giving into that agenda, and all it gave them was up close and personal terrorism on their streets every day. More Israeli citizens were killed in the first year of Bennett being in charge than in the whole 8 years that Benjamin Netanyahu was prime minister.
Yeah.
And so while we're speaking of Israel, you got something about Iran and Israel?
Yes.
Go ahead,
So
Lonaiah.
The Hill wrote an article called Israel and Iran 5 Minutes to Armageddon. Now, it's just interesting that a non-religious newspaper is taking something from the Bible and, running a headline with it. So Israel and Iran are rapidly approaching an inflection point over Tehran's nuclear program in what was the atomic equivalent of a controlled clash between the two countries is now devolving into an unconstrained chain reaction. So the article from The Hill describes that there's 95 pounds of highly enriched uranium that Iran has produced as deeply concerning. This is what they said. That amount is enough for a nuclear chain reaction to sustain itself and indicates Iran is trying to enrich enough uranium to build a nuclear bomb, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
But this reality concerns the U.S. military. Actually, the gentleman from the Pentagon who's now retired, this is what he said. He said in March that, in a Senate hearing that Iran has 3,000 ballistic missiles. This is what General Kenneth McKenzie said, including variants capable of reaching Tel Aviv, while assessing Tehran's nuclear breakout is now measured in weeks, not months. So to prevent that nuclear breakout, Israel may soon be forced to attack Iran's nuclear program. They would likely bomb the centrifuges enriching uranium in Natanz and other ground sites along with additional targets.
Yeah.
So they said, in other words, Israel is rattling the sword of warfare at Iran. Any raid into Iran's airspace will result in retaliation from Hezbollah, Hamas, and other Tehran-backed militias. The threat of war in the Middle East is intensifying.
Yep.
So it might not be Armageddon, obviously, that comes at the end of the bowl of judgments, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's in the tribulation.
still.
It could lead into Ezekiel 38,
Right.
though.
Yeah.
And 3,000 surface-to-surface missiles Iran has, and they're moving them in to Damascus to make sure that they get really close before they can fire them. And we know that's why the Israelis are bombing the outskirts of Damascus and even the Damascus airport.
Yeah, and
like
I
we've
did just
reported.
hear that Iran shut down or got in Israel's missile alert system. So they shut it down. So they weren't being alerted when missiles were coming back. I know they did it a few weeks ago, but they just did it again last week. Yeah.
Well, and when they have missiles in Damascus, it's a short distance, so the protection system has a short time to protect the Israeli people. So all of this is, what else can Israel do to protect itself than go on the offensive?
Well, remember, we reported probably a month and a half ago that a missile was shot from Syria, and it did not alert. The Israeli defense systems did not alert, and they were wondering that. And we actually made the comment, we wonder if they've got something up their sleeve here.
Right.
And yes, it turns out they do. That's so interesting that we did report that one missile
We did.
they shot into Israel, and Israel was scratching their heads saying, why didn't we even detect this? Well, now we know why it wasn't detected. And, on another note, I don't know how much this is being reported, but I felt like it's something that you need to be watching. Lithuania is a member of NATO, and Lithuania was only given independence by the Russians if the Russians were able to have a consistent, railroad line through the country of Lithuania. It's very important for the Russians to have this railroad line. And Lithuania has said, we're only going to allow you to bring 50% of the stuff through now. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Russia could be really close to declaring war on a country that is part of NATO. NATO stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And I'll just list for you the heavy hitters in NATO. This isn't everyone. There's about 30 countries, all right, give or take one or two. The heavier hitters, of course, are the United States, Britain, Turkey, but I'm sure Turkey will not show up against Russia because they're good buddies. France, Poland, Italy, Greece, Germany, the Canadians. There's many other countries, Belgium, Denmark, a lot of little countries also, Norway. Spain's not a little country, but the point is, altogether, these countries can raise an army of 6 million strong if you count their reserves. Little Lithuania, just kind of give you, of the 30 countries NATO is made up of, little Lithuania has an army of like 45,000 people. And so, which is minuscule. And just to give you a rundown, like the United States can put 1.4 million active duty troops in the field.
Yeah.
They have 800,040 reservists on top of that, right? Wow. 2.2 million. Yeah. The next biggest army in NATO behind us is Turkey.
Right.
Which you've add everything up for them, it's 900,000.
That's a big army.
It is a big army. 400,000 of those are active duty. And I don't feel like we could count Turkey if this turned into a fight again between Russia and NATO, because Turkey is a close Russian ally and has been for some time. So just to give you the makeup of NATO, after us, the U.S., counting reservists, has over 2 million troops. All right, the next three biggest armies are Greece, Italy, and then the French. All three added up can bring 1 million men. The three of those added up. So they're running about 330,000 apiece. And I'm trying to tell you this. You've got armies raging from the U.S. at 2 million troops. That's if we have everyone, and we know we can never bring everyone because we have troops in South Korea that we cannot pull out. We have troops in the States that would have to stay here. And so I was surprised to see the British can only put they have a total army of 230,000 troops. 200,000 of them are active duty, although I know the United Kingdom has got really, really good equipment.
Yeah, they do.
Great ships, great planes, great weapons. But I'm just trying to give you a picture of what this would be like, because you have all these countries trying to coordinate against the Russians, who I have not looked good against the Ukraine. Most military analysts believe that NATO would have a huge advantage, not just the Army, but Air Force, Navy, all of it. But you're talking about coordination, though, and you're talking about 30 different countries trying to bring everything together.
Right.
So this is something to watch, because it could spark war in Europe involving a lot of these countries. All that to say that I think at this point, it's 50-50 that we could get a direct confrontation between Russia and NATO. But remember this now, if Biden doesn't want to get into this, like I got a feeling he won't, right? It could be a direct confrontation between the Russians and the European Union. Because if Biden says no, that means NATO's out. In comes the European Union, which changes things dramatically. If Lithuania does not lift its sanctions and allow the Russian goods to get into the Russian territory by using this railway through Lithuania, there is probably going to be war, because Russia has to have this warm water port on the Baltic Sea. It's everything to them. It's their only warm water port. That means a port of salt water that does not freeze over in the wintertime. It's the only one they have. And that's how they get their goods into that port, is from the railway in Lithuania. They've got to travel through Lithuania. So We'll see what Lithuania does. I would be shocked if Russia bullied Lithuania into, faked an invasion, started to build up troops to make Lithuania, bend in this. I guarantee you Biden just sits there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it will encourage the Russians, just like it has. He's encouraged them all along.
Because they don't, we're not getting strong responses from the U.S. To any sort of aggression or power or any sort of tactical things that we should be responding to. We're getting nothing from the White House.
Right.
And that's the same thing that's going on with Israel. They show weakness. They try to appease. What happens? They have more people dying on their streets than the last 8 years altogether. Yeah. And that's what's gone on here with, as soon as the previous administration was out, we're not even a year and a half in, boom, Russia, a full-scale invasion of the Ukraine, which is a, sovereign free country.
Right.
Sovereign free country. And so something to watch here. Yeah. I don't know how much that's being reported, but I wanted to give you kind of from our point of view, because I always go right to what do they have militarily, and you can find all this. You can find how their if you look at the NATO Air Force and the navies, it dwarfs Russia. It dwarfs what Russia has. But then again, Russia has been at war, and so they're a little bit more seasoned, I would say, with NATO having to. Would have to coordinate. If you're telling you got to coordinate 30 armies, all right, that's going to take time. They would not be quick on their feet. But with that, we've got a really great, just disappointing. Biden's coming back with this disinformation board. Of course, John has some information on that.
Well, Big Sister Number 2 is the title of the story from the New York Post. So the Biden administration on Thursday created a new internet policy task force, this one led by Vice President Kamala Harris, with goals including developing programs and policies to protect political figures and journalists from disinformation and abuse and harassment, which in my mind means people that disagree with them and won't go along with their lies.
Well, can I say something? Because Biden's national climate advisor, Gina McCarthy, has expressed her desire to see social media platforms censor anyone who's critical of that Biden administration push for green energy.
Oh my gosh.
So it's free speech.
It's like, hey, you guys can have all the free speech you want as long as you don't go against the things that we're trying to push in our initiatives, which over the last 4 years that, they felt very free to go against anything else that the previous administration
I just read this morning, or saw on my Instagram, I should say, that Justin Trudeau, how much fuel he used.
Oh, man.
Since 2020. They said it was like, he didn't adjust anything. He didn't change anything, right? So these people who are pushing the green energy are the ones who are using
They're the left-wing liberal elites. Let's just be, and they feel like they have a right? When they take away your meat, they'll be eating meat.
Absolutely.
Trust me, right? Because they think they deserve it, and they think they're better, all of them. And I know it's a kind of a little rant here, but the disinformation board, all right, what that'll do, look at we started on this right away. Before we heard anything about this board, we were reading a new phrase on the Department of Homeland Security's website. It started with that, out of the Joe Rogan stuff, and they put that, and we're like, oh, what's coming from this? It's the Ministry of Truth. When we making fun of that, that's what they had in Harry Potter, and it's just freedom of speech, America. They're looking to take it.
But it's funny that they say freedom of speech, because one of their points is all people deserve to use the internet free from fear.
Right.
But then you're going to control what
everyone says.
Yes.
Free from fear, unless you agree.
Right.
Yes.
So anytime you hold it up to the light, it just doesn't make sense.
Good point.
Yeah.
That's why you pray for your government.
Yeah.
Right.
This is why it's very clear in the New Testament to pray for your leaders, good or bad.
Yeah.
Lonaiah, you had a little bit on that California bill, correct?
Yeah, so speaking of praying for your leaders and making a change, so we reported, I feel like it was on one of our first 2 episodes about the bill in California. It's called SB 866, where they were trying to allow children at the age of 12 to be in charge of their own vaccine. What's the word I'm looking for?
Vaccine agency?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Senate bill that was pushed, it didn't get enough votes.
Yeah.
So then they pushed the age to 15 now. So now they're trying to get it to 15-year-old, but they didn't have a bunch of votes. So that just shows that your prayers and the people in California having a voice, going to your Senate, making calls, sending in emails, not signing, the bill that came your way did make a difference, because right now they change it from 12 to 15. And they're saying that they don't think that this guy will get enough votes to even pass for 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
So it'll go back to 18.
So stay strong.
Yes.
Stay strong, America. And this is something else as we close it down here. And by the way, any of these, we're not making this up. You can see on the notes, we have notes where we get all this information. All right. Every single article we use and where we get our information is listed at the bottom. It's at the bottom of the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Correct?
That's correct.
And so GreenStep cities, you guys, this is a big deal. It's basically the Green New Deal at the local level. Yeah. And we're reporting this because this is going on in Minnesota, right around us, right? There are, it is sold as a friendly environmental free user program. There are 29 best practices with 6 steps. When your city council signs up for this, they have signed off on giving up your vote and your voice. They change the language in the GS program to better hide what they're doing. Here's an example. One is they want to limit water to 25 gallons of water per day, per person. Now hidden in the language because they were found out. And think about it. That represents drinking, cooking, dishes, floors, laundry, bathing, cars, pets, garden, lawns, hosing off the deck, flushing toilets. Who and where do you go for more? At what consequence?
Right.
And your city council you need to check, are they in the process of giving up their power? Because they could be doing this without even you knowing it. Your voice to non-elected and a program initiated from the other side of the world. All right. They're looking to control your movement through transportation, restricting property rights, food, etc. These decisions are made by our to control our movement through transportation. By narrowing the roads. Have you noticed that?
Yes, they just
extending the bike paths, making them wider. It's all a setup. It's all a setup to because in the end, less people can travel through there at one time. They're looking to control your movement, and these are non-elected people. The first several steps are free, but leads a city into socialism and communism, and people are totally oblivious. All right. And this is going on all over Minnesota. Yes. All over Minnesota.
Can I say one thing? Because I just went to a meeting the other night in my city, and there was a guy asking, because in our city, they voted 3 to 4 that we don't have masks. Well, when the vote came out, they went with masks. This was back in February, right?
Right.
So they voted against the majority vote. And this one guy in the back was like, what can we do to stop that? And there was a city council member, and he's like, the best way to get your voice heard is to show up for city council meetings, and when they ask for open mics, he's like, you come with all of your emotions, you come with everything you want to say, and you say it on the open mic, because you're looking at the people in the face, and they have to be accountable to you. When you send in an email, when you call, they can kind of like skirt it away, but here they can't do that, right?
Yep.
And look, as streets are narrowed for bike lanes, I don't know. I've already seen it, right?
They did that down our street, and it is so annoying. Like, you almost hit the car next to you.
Is Hopkins a GreenStep?
No, it's
city?
Minnetonka.
Minnetonka.
No,
Sorry.
they're
That's
on their way.
Sorry about that.
Hopkins is the one
But
I
you're in
saw
the
the green
Hopkins. Aren't
stuff.
you in the Hopkins School District?
Yes, but
Okay.
Minnetonka and down our road, they totally changed.
Okay.
So I think Minnetonka's on its way to be a green
I wasn't.
city.
It
doesn't offend
What does that
me.
matter? What does it matter?
Minnetonka roads are already narrow.
They are.
Terrible roads.
They're terrible. Tell me about it.
Oh my goodness.
Bikes up here, bike lanes up here are used for 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's to inconvenience motorists and prevent freedom of movement. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. All right. And, whoever's writing this article, you can find it.
This was actually from listener Kathy. Remember? Yes.
yeah.
Who's running for House?
Kathy.
Oh, really?
Yes.
By the grace of God,
For
writes,
Plymouth.
we were able to keep it out of Plymouth,
Yes.
right? Plymouth is, I could walk to Plymouth in 10 minutes from where I live. She says we're able to keep it out of Plymouth the last few years, but we're losing several of our conservatives next cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it's all about is, can you imagine them limiting your water?
No.
Okay. And there's a huge problem with foundations and their relationships with state agencies creating the private-public partnerships. And that's where all this comes in, because then you're eligible for grants.
Right.
Once you're eligible for grants, you turn it over. These relationships have created a four branch of non-elected government that are systematically removing and stealing your freedoms and liberties, not just America, but Minnesota. All right. The example in our area is the Metro. I think she calls it the Met Council.
Yes, the Met Council is correct. Yep.
She says it is 10 times more powerful than California's.
Yeah.
This is an appointed, not an elected government entity, which has taken the right of eminent domain and taxes us, yet we have no choice and can't vote them out. This is they're taking America from the local levels. Kathy, she's written in a lot,
yeah,
right?
but she's running for House.
Yes, and I've talked to her in the lobby.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
And we basically highlighted her email. It was so good.
Yeah.
Because this explains the green steps to me.
Yeah.
More than I've ever seen it.
Yeah.
Right. What she's doing.
Because the website, when I try, I saw it come on, and you're trying to read it, and you're like, what is all this?
Yeah.
It's made to be confusing. It's made to be confusing.
So we're in Hennepin County here.
Yep.
The Met Council is literally driving all of the things that are trying to change what Hennepin County, Minneapolis, the face of it. And it is with all of these things put into it. So, look into that. Be, again, like you're saying, be involved at the local level. That is how you start changing the national level. That's where your vote counts even more.
Right.
So be involved, make your voice heard, because we're fighting that here in Minnesota with the Met Council and all of these other green space or green step cities, whatever,
Blue zone, green.
They're doing a Green New Deal. They're doing a Green New Deal locally.
Yeah.
One by one.
Right.
City council member by city council member. But they're going to turn it over to somebody else. That's what they're going to do. And I'll just be straight. If you vote left, that's what they're looking to do generally.
Yeah.
And I haven't gone this far to say that, but that's the truth.
Right.
That's the truth. And
well, I mean, I always feel like you have to say, as Christians, we want to be good stewards of our earth. We want to be good stewards of the resources that we have, but we want to have the independence, the liberty, the freedom to make decisions on our own.
Right.
And not be controlled by people that we don't agree with and have agendas that are controlled by other people, by other things that don't promote those same things.
Like they're
going to
control your water in your own house.
Right.
Like how much water you get to use in your own house. That's what they're trying to do.
And so, we could go on and on about this. I just want to thank every single subscriber.
Yeah.
Whether if you did it right from the beginning, or we just had a big group of like 150 come in. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We thank our viewers. we thank our listeners, and we're blessed to be able to do this. We're just trying to, we're trying to watch so that really that you can watch, right?
Yeah.
So that we can all watch, because some
Yeah.
people don't have time to try to dig this information up, and
Right.
Lonaiah does most of that. She's kind of our little investigator, and we do pray for our viewers. We pray for our subscribers. And our listeners. I do it every day. I
Yeah.
do it every day, and we did it even before we started this podcast. But if I've got a bunch of weird facial expressions today, I had. I'll just be honest with you. I had something called corrective lens surgery. Got a whole new lens put in my left eye. Get a whole new lens put in my right eye in July. And so it's just for a while there, you're not even allowed to bend over, right? You can't shower. You can't wash your eye. You can't get your eye wet. Right, so I feel like I have almost like you have to wear a lens over your eye every night and tape it down, but you can't really wash it. So if I've got weird facial expressions, I'm just healing. So I pray for
That's
you.
awesome.
I pray for you. You pray for me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
God bless you. We'll see you next week on the Final Hour podcast.